What's going on, everyone? My name is Jake Schultz, and I'm here with Zulfi Sheikh, and we're here to discuss the WNBA game that took place this past Saturday at Scotiabank Arena between the Chicago Sky and the Minnesota Lynx. Yeah. So I just want to get your vibe because you're at the game, and I want to understand, what was that crowd like? How did it feel to just be in that crowd with everyone so excited to finally begin a WNBA game here in Toronto?
Honestly, it was electric. I think the biggest thing was there were so many kids, so many young girls that were just excited to be there. I remember behind me there was a family of 4, all young girls, and they were just talking about the players with so much joy, so much passion. And during the anthems, the crowd was just all into it. I think you could just tell it was one of those blueprint moments that you're gonna look back in history. So I think that was so special for everyone, and just excitement is the word I would use. There was so much excitement around, and I think that's something we're all going to remember from it.
What's one moment from the game that really stood out to you, though, that you were surprised by?
It's a good question. I think just it's not a specific moment, but just the fanfare and production behind it all. The lines for merch were so long. It was so hard to get a shirt. I got lucky. This was the last Bridget Carleton shirt that was there. And I think just at halftime they had Julie Black, who was there, was obviously made an impact in the past and this year in terms of just being a woman talking about sports and the environment. So I think just the production level that went behind it all, it didn't look like it was something they were doing just because, women, we want to put sports up for them. No, we actually care. They invested into it. They made it a real thing. It was taken very seriously and professionally. And I think that's what's going to stick to me, is because this isn't some kind of charity case. It's something to actually show that these women are athletes and deserve the stage.
Right. You mentioned Bridget Carleton, who's from Canada. She got a massive standing ovation there. What do you think that felt like for her, and to see a Canadian WNBA star playing in the league? She didn't play too much, but what was your overall thoughts on how she played it? How do you think she handled everything?
Yeah, in terms of how she handled it, I think she did it pretty well. It's hard to try to contextualize how anybody would handle that, almost becoming a spokesperson for the game in Canada, but also trying to represent an entire league, and how that would kind of feel. I'm sure it would be a lot of pressure in some sense as well, but I think she handled it well. She was just an advocate the entire time, talking about how excited she was for the game being here and what it meant being a representative, and all the family and friends she had in the crowd as well for it. Just how she played. She didn't play too much in the game. It was a preseason game, and it's an early preseason game for the team, so definitely they're getting their rhythm down, rotations and things like that. It was a bit of a struggle. This game was definitely just a defensive battle to begin with, but I think overall she got into a rhythm throughout. She's obviously a player who bases a lot of her success on activity and moving around the ball, so I think she did well overall with that, but she was just a rock star when it came to being an advocate for basketball in the country.
Where do you think Toronto goes from here in terms of the WNBA? I know there's been a ton of lobbying for years now that Toronto should be getting a WNBA team, and it seems to really be taking traction. You saw that a lot at the game. There's tons of moments with people showing signs saying, we want season tickets, we want the WNBA team here. What do you think is that next step in Toronto getting that team here?
I think the next step is just not letting this type of excitement and buzz die down. I think this conversation started quite a while ago, and it got to the point where there was a Twitter page that started an organization to put in bids for WNBA teams, and to the point where after the Raptors won a championship, there's articles coming out about why Toronto needs a WNBA team, but that started to kind of die down a bit. And the thought's always been there, and it's great to have the thought, but you need to give the WNBA more reasons than just that we're excited. You need to show that this city is serious about supporting women's sports. So start with something like going to your local college sports in terms of UFT, TMU, things like that, York University. Show that you're supporting grassroots level with the women's sports, especially women's basketball, and showing that you're willing to invest money into it. And I think if you do that and keep that going, it takes away any excuses the WNBA may have to pick a city in the United States. It's obviously a big venture to say that we want you to bring a team to a whole different country. So if we're saying that, we have to make sure we mean it.
You look at the game in general, and you see that it was sold out, which is an incredible accomplishment. How much of that do you think factors into the fact that this felt like very much an alternative to everything else that's happening around Toronto? You obviously see a lot of ticket prices up recently with inflation and everything like that. These tickets were not that expensive. They're about $25. If the WNBA was to come to Toronto, how important do you think the success would be to have cheaper tickets to give people more alternative and wanting to actually come out and support these people?
I think it'll be incredibly important. I'm not trying to throw shots here, but MLSE can take a page out of their book, quite honestly. I think having the ticket prices that you do can make sense, but at the same time, access is number one over everything. Like, a lot of people choose to go to spring training baseball games versus the MLB games. Why? Because they're cheaper and you can get closer to athletes. So it's the same thing. If I can tell a little girl that she can go see a WNBA game and sit 5 rows from Kalia Cooper for $60 versus paying $140 to be in the nosebleeds of a Raptors game, which one do you think she would pick? Right? So I think it's very important that those prices stay that way so people have access, and there's a lot more opportunity for people maybe not in the most privileged environments to still be able to dream and see some of the people they look up to.
I'll throw one last one here, just a fun one. If Toronto eventually, I think they will, when they get their WNBA team, what is a name that you think that they should go by?
Look, I've given this a lot of thought. I've thought this through. It's the Toronto Queens. I know it can sound a little cheesy, but hear me out. The Sacramento Kings exist, so Kings has been used. Toronto has so many connections to the word Queen. You got Queen Station, Queen's Park, Queen's Quay. You have Queen Elizabeth Way, like the highway. So I think there's so many connections to the word Queen, and the WNBA is known for not doing common like animals or mascots and things like that. They don't go with those names, like the Washington Mystics, the LA Sparks, the New York Liberty. They're a little unconventional when it comes to names. So I think taking a risk with something like the Toronto Queens would be very nice, and it's also a way that continues that movement to empower women, because these women will be treated like queens and they will be stars in the city when it comes to the sport of basketball. So Toronto Queens is my pick.
Yeah, I think if it's anything to go by, I think Toronto will be getting that team very, very soon. I appreciate you guys for watching. Back to everyone else.